I'm the food enthusiast here at J More Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live on Facebook, drop your comments and questions for my guest or myself into the comment box, and I will check from time to time. Today's guest is Kristen Hess, aka the Artful Gourmet. She is a content creator, food stylist, photographer, philosopher, and culinary media personality who brings together food, storytelling, culture through her multi-platform brand, The Artful Gourmet. With a background in advertising, visual design, and culinary media, Kristen has built a career around creating visually stunning food photography and content and compelling culinary storytelling. Through her blog, podcast, and YouTube channel, she shares recipes, restaurant discoveries, travel inspiration, and creative insights that celebrate the art of living and eating. Her work explores the intersection of food, travel, culture, music, and lifestyle, inviting audiences to rediscover the joy of cooking and gathering around the table. Let's bring in Kristen.
Hello.
Hi, Kristen. I'm so happy you could join us. You're such a busy person doing so many different things. So thank you for finding the time to join us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
I always sort of kick off with what's on your plate to do today other than doing the show?
Well, I have quite a few things. As you said, I'm always a busy bee. I'm actually, well, first off, I'm going to be moving out of San Antonio at the end of April to move back to New York. So that's a big thing. I'm sort of just, collecting all my move stuff, in boxes and things like that. But I've been here in San Antonio for almost 4.5 years. So it's going to be kind of crazy over the next few weeks. So I'm working on that, which isn't really exciting, but, it's important. I'm actually doing a voiceover training. It's not a training, but it's for like an AI thing. And they're kind of testing me out. Like they hired me to do this freelance project, which is sort of interesting. So I'm going to be working on some test scripts for that. I do have some voiceover samples I'm doing for another company. Do you know Rise Mushroom Coffee?
Yes.
Okay. They're looking for influencers. And so they had reached out to me and I'm going to be shooting a video, like a test video for that. And then, just planning out the next few weeks because again, I'm moving, but I'm still trying to, keep my content up to date. And I'd like to get a podcast out this week other than the one that we're doing today. But just doing a lot of planning and, keeping my head straight while this move is all happening. So yeah.
Well, you move around quite a bit. You're originally from like Buffalo area of New York, and
Buffalo,
then went to
Rochester. Yep.
yeah, and then New York City, and then Florida and Texas, and
Back to
now
New
you're
York. Yeah.
and you're leaving there and going back up to New York. Are you
Yes.
going to the city or suburbs? What are you going to be doing?
Probably both. I'm gonna eventually move back to the city, but I'm gonna spend a little time in upstate New York with my mom because, my dad passed last year and
Oh,
she's kind of alone right now. My sister was helping her out and she went back to Phoenix. So I'm gonna take a little break, maybe just spend a couple months over the summer because it's really beautiful up there. And I have friends that I grew up with up there and, the Finger Lakes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to take a little break, and hang out with her for a little bit and then find my way back to the city. Hopefully by the end of the year would
yeah.
be sort of my goal. Cause that's really where I started my business and where all my contacts and friends and businesses. So, yeah, San Antonio has been great, but I, honestly moved here for a full-time job as a food stylist for HEB through the studio. And there was a lot of organizational changes and HEB ended up taking over the whole studio. So our whole studio basically was laid off. And in a way, it was sort of a good thing because I was dying to get back into my business. Kind of like you, I do writing, I do styling and photography and all of that. And in this role, it was just food styling. So, after 4 years, I'm like, you know what? That's cool. I want to go back to New York and do my business. And So here I am.
Well, well, you do so many things that in preparing to interview you, I'm going, where do I start? Really. So I'm going to come back to the second question I always ask. And I think you're very similar with the last comment we said to discover the joy of cooking and gathering around the table. Tell me about your family table when you were growing up. What was that family table like?
Okay. Yeah. I actually had a really good childhood. Like you said, I grew up in upstate New York. My dad was an executive at Xerox for, his whole life, 45 years. And my mom, even though she worked when she was, younger in her 20s, once she had kids, she was a stay-at-home mom. So we had the luxury of having a mom that cooked for us. And, it was a lot of comfort food, I mean, we're talking 70s, 80s, right? But good food, right? It was all homemade, and my
Right.
family is German and Polish by, ancestry. So a lot of times my mom would, make some of my grandmother's beet soup, or, my dad loved beef stroganoff, things like that. But a lot of in the summer we'd grill out and do big parties with our relatives in Buffalo and get like the whole family together. So yeah, I had a really good childhood, and we can talk about it later, but my whole Groovy Eats series that I'm doing is a whole sort of honoring my childhood and my family and my memories going through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I talk a lot about my dad and my family growing up and things like that because it means a lot to me. So,
Right. We have a guest, your cat's taking a nap behind you.
oh, hello. Yeah, that's Ollie. He's my little 1-year-old.
I'm not sure he has anything to say, but he can stay. He can
No,
stay.
every time I do an interview, he ends up hopping up there behind me. That's sort of his little sleeping spot. So I
That's
have
great.
another one, but he's busy eating over there. So
Don't
yes.
worry about it. We got it. Um, so in looking at everything you do, which is a lot, people. Um, Education, high school, you were very involved with art, music, English, acting. And I think the food photography was not your initial goal. It was graphic design. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I was really big into art in high school, and I was big into musical theater and singing and all that too. But when it came to choosing what was I going to major in college, I'm like, well, what can I make money at? And actually, my aunt was an art director in New York City, and she inspired me. She brought me out there when I was 11 years old for my birthday. And I flew out there alone. She took me all around the city for like a whole long weekend. And I was just so inspired by her and the city and the lights and the magic that was sort of like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. So that was the path that I forged, going forward. And then, yeah, we can talk a little bit later about my later career, but I did work in advertising for a long time. I was a freelance designer at Home Depot in Atlanta. I had my own freelance firm there too. And then I actually wanted to learn the business side of advertising and how to run a company, kind of more management and marketing. So I
Right.
left Atlanta in 2004, and I did my master's degree in Australia for 2 years. I moved to Melbourne and I did 3 semesters in advertising over there. And it was awesome. I got to do my internship at McCann Erickson, working on Maybelline L'Oreal Paris. I
Fabulous.
Yeah, I worked at Y&R and Blue Marlin Brand Design. And actually, my first food account over there was Kohl's Supermarkets. We were rebranding their whole website and all that. But ultimately, I didn't want to stay in it, Australia. I wanted to move to New York City. So I did move there in 2005, straight from Australia, started working in advertising and worked at several firms as more of a kind of a creative project manager, producer
Right.
type. Even though I was a designer, but I was really, wanting to kind of learn that management skill, which working in advertising in New York for 8 years, I learned that quite well. But then I started getting into food probably around 2007, like when all the blogs were coming out. And I never thought about going into food as a full-time job. It was just an interest of mine. Like I always loved cooking, and I loved food magazines and Food Network and all of that. So I started taking cooking classes at the Institute of Culinary Education. And
Right.
that's how it all started. Yeah. So
And you did a food and wine course as well there, didn't you?
I did. It was a certificate in food and wine pairing at International Culinary Center, which was really cool because, everyone loves wine, but do we really know how it's made or where it's from or what the difference is? So learning all of that, really cool stuff about all the wine, but also how to pair it with different types of food was just really interesting. So that was super cool.
At any time, no. When did that camera end up in your hand?
Okay. So I started my blog. It was probably like 2010. I officially started my blog. And I bought like a Canon Rebel. So it was just a beginner camera. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, again, I was a graphic designer and I had a good eye, but I didn't really know digital photography so well because back in the day we did film photography. I'm really dating myself, but um, probably wasn't until 2012. In January, I left my job at 360i. We were actually working on the Cole Craft Foods website redesign. So it was that year that, we were hiring food stylists and photographers to do all the food and the recipes for craft. And we would go to this, big studio in Chelsea and had all these big photo shoots. And I was like, this is what I want to do. So I left my really high paying good job, but because I really wanted to work as a stylist and a photographer rather than just managing a creative team, at an agency. So I started my business. The first few months were a little slow, but I, didn't really have clients. I had followers from my blog, but then a friend of mine, Michelle, she had a project. She was doing some kind of a wine club with food pairings from Israel, and she wanted me to, we met on LinkedIn, and she took me out for coffee at Soho and espresso, and she's like, "I love your work. I'm going to do this monthly club. Would you shoot my wine and food?" So I started with her. And then 6 months later, I got a really big cookbook shoot with Gary Null, Whole Foods, which is on the Upper West Side. He has a million cookbooks and he's a vegan. I don't know if you know the store or not, but it was
I know Whole Foods, but
yeah. It's a vegan Whole Foods store. And it was like a 6 or 7 week project. We shot in his store downstairs. He had a chef in the kitchen. I was shooting. We didn't even have a stylist, so I was kind of doing both. And then after that, I got a cookbook with HarperCollins through an agent that I met at a cookbook conference, and it was for Pinkalicious. I don't know if you know the series. It's a kids series. It's a like little cartoon, but they have a Broadway show. They have a TV show. We did a cookbook basically made out of cupcakes and candy, all the characters in her book. So it was super cool because it was like a big set, we were hanging butterflies,
right.
clear string and, making castles out of candy and cupcakes. So that was my first like two big cookbooks my first year in. So that was sort of cool. And then I got into more of the food styling the following year when I had a recruiter.
Well, didn't at some point, didn't you host something for PBS, Cooking with Color for Kids?
Yes. So I met David Hillman. He owns eDining News. He used to live in New York. He's in Florida now. But it was basically a website, kind of like restaurant marketing. Like he would do advertising and work with a lot of restaurants. And he was a producer in his past life. And he was doing this whole producer training to get on television. And he wanted to do a show. Well, at the time, I was thinking about doing a whole series called Cooking with Color, not for kids, but just cooking with color, cooking through the color palette. That was sort of my whole book idea. So I was like, why don't we do something like that? And he just wanted to get kids involved for some reason, which is fine. Maybe the Brooklyn Public Arts Center, they wanted to have a public show with kids on it. So yeah, we brought in local chefs, we brought in kids, and the whole idea was cooking through the color palette, like through seasons, so for Christmas, we would do, like a cranberry sauce and maybe, something that was white or green, you know what I mean? So it was really fun. And we did that for probably I don't know, 6 or 7 years. He moved to Florida. I moved to Florida. We did these Meet the Chef events, but then we lost touch when I moved to Texas and, doing a full-time job. I just wasn't really doing anything with him anymore. So, but yeah, it was really cool. I was on public television in New York for about 5 or 6 years.
The somewhere along the line, and it might be, and we're going to come to this somewhere in, you're part of a documentary series called Women in Power, which I don't think has aired as yet. It's airing 2026, and you're a cast member. It's somewhere in there, or somewhere that you've rebranded yourself like 3 times. And I mean, I just look at everything that you've done and I go, where does she find the time? You're doing podcasts, you're doing this, you're writing there. So
How do I
I
find
touched I
Well,
touched on it, Woman in Power documentary series. Tell us about that. I don't want people to miss that when it comes out.
yeah, well, you know what? It's actually airing. It's on streaming. It's an app on streaming television. So it's not like just on Netflix, but you can get like Inside Success television network, like an app, like you would Showtime or HBO or whatever. It's on TV. So there are some episodes out. They actually just did Serena Williams. Mario Lopez is on it. There are some celebrities and big wigs, but the whole focus with the women in power, Inside Success has a bunch of different shows. Like there's Next Level CEO, there's um, Inside Success, there's the Women in Power is all about women entrepreneurs, and it could be a small business or a big business, but they just really want to highlight women that are, sort of doing well in their field and telling their story. So it's really interesting because they sort of take you through. It was an
Right.
interview. I flew to Miami. You do have to audition for it. And I think they still are auditioning. So if other people out there want to apply, you can. But you go through this interview series with them. You have to audition. Once you're in, they send you to Miami. And then it's basically a whole half day. You and the photographer who is your interviewer asking you about your life and, how did you grow up? What were you inspired by? Tell us about this. So it's kind of this documentary style, but they do have us send them photos and videos of us, and they have pictures of me and my family and pictures of New York and pictures, you know what I mean? So they make it into a documentary. It's about 20 minutes long. So they are on the final round of changes. So hopefully it'll be coming out soon. And then once it's out, I'll definitely let people know where to find it and how to watch it. But
Right.
yeah, I've seen the rough cut. It's pretty cool. It's sort of weird watching yourself on TV, but
Right. Well, it's the 2026 version of This Is Your Life.
yes,
That
absolutely.
really goes back.
And it's supposed to be inspiring for other entrepreneurs and people. There's people that have
Right.
lost their, mate, or they've lost their legs, or, whatever. So there's always a story behind it. And
Right.
it's very cool to watch and hear everybody's story is unique. But I actually got to meet a lot of the other cast members too. In November, Rudy Maurer, who's the head of the Insight Success, he does a mastermind a couple times a year, which is really kind of like a marketing conference, teaching entrepreneurs his secrets. And I mean, this guy's like a billionaire. He's only like 30, it's crazy. But it was cool though, because we got to stay in South Beach. They had little parties and networking events. And then we learned from him over like 3 days. And then I shot my show that Friday. So yeah, it's a really cool experience. And I'm excited to see the final. So,
Well, it's not far off, that's for sure.
yeah,
I want to get back to photography
sure.
because I liked one of the things you said, and it was on your Instagram. If it doesn't pop, it doesn't stop the scroll.
Right.
And I went through a lot of your pictures, but the one that I loved was the Lily Pulitzer shoot.
Oh,
Tell
yes.
me a little bit more about that because it was very Lily Pulitzer looking.
Yes. Yeah. So I was actually the food and prop stylist for that. It was a guy named Eric Melvin. He was from LA, but Lily Pulitzer reached out to me. I think they have a social like marketing group in Pennsylvania. So I was living in New York at the time, and they wanted to promote some of their new props that they had, which, are in some of those pictures, but, make it really like light and bright and colorful with food and fruit and all that good stuff. So yeah, we shot at this big place in Brooklyn. It was a 2-day shoot, and there were like maybe 2 art directors and me. I had an assistant and the photographer, and we just played around, like how can we make these props look really beautiful, but also incorporate food or drinks into them. So that was a really cool, and it was for their social media campaign. So that was something I was really excited about. And I love color, that's the whole kind of thing behind Artful Gourmet is, I used to be an artist. I love color and photography and design and all of that stuff. So I feel like, there's all kinds of different mood. I'm actually going to be doing a series, like a blog series, and I'd like to maybe create some more videos around it, but just, teaching people sort of the fundamentals of photography, but also different types, right? Like there's dark and moody, there's light and bright, there's super colorful, there's all kinds of different things that are kind of a little more advanced. I mean, honestly, when I started photography, the biggest thing is learning how to use a camera and right, how to get things in focus and how to get the look that you want. But once you know your camera, like I've had my Canon since 2010 now. And I did take photography courses at the International Center of Photography. Yeah, in New York. They have Digital Photo 1, Digital Photo 2. They have food photography. They have studio lighting courses. I even did a portraits class with natural light where we all shot in this really cool arts building in Union Square. And like there was like an old man in there with all his colored pencils, and like we learned how to shoot portraits even too. So
that's great.
Yeah, it was really cool. And this is over, 6-7 years. I was doing this on the side, but there's a lot of people that, they don't maybe want to just focus on photography, but the more you can improve your photos, I think, yeah, like think about social media. Like there's so much noise, right? There's like,
how do you stand out? I'm wondering, with everything that you've learned in photography, I mean, so many people are shooting food with their phone.
Right.
Is there a common error, or is there a tip that you can give them that would improve saying, it's natural light or blah, blah, blah? Any tip for people with the phone taking pictures of food?
Absolutely. I think when you're first starting out, which is what I did, I would definitely use natural light because it's easier. The only limitation to that is like, say you're doing a real photo shoot for a client and it's 10 hours long, the light's going to change. So I tend to use my phone more for like social media food, right? You're out at a restaurant or you're shooting whatever. Maybe you just want to do a quick snap or two, right? That's great. But if you're going to be doing like a real like cookbook photo shoot over 8 days and you know what I mean, then you got to kind of get in there and use maybe some studio lighting and learn that. But I think the cool thing with the phone is the cameras now are amazing. I remember I first bought mine in 2008. It didn't even have a flash. And I went over to Greece with my girlfriends for my 40th birthday, and all the pictures during the day were gorgeous, they're blue and white and all these colors. But then at night, like everything was dark. There was no flash and it was horrible. It was like iPhone 3, but it really has come a long way. And actually, like on my phone, these like 3 dots here, like one of them is 35 millimeter, one is like telephoto zooming in, and one of them is a wide camera. So, kind of learning to play around with that, when you go into your photos, you can pick like portrait. Say you're shooting food really close up and you want the background to be blurred, use the portrait, and you can adjust your f-stop, which means the size of the hole that your camera has. So if it's like a low 1.8, 2.4, that's going to be a shallow depth of field, meaning, your subject's right there, but everything's blurred out. If you wanted to shoot a big group photo and you're 20 feet away, you want to use a higher f-stop because it makes everything sharp and clear and in focus. But those are just fundamentals of photography. But, honestly, there's a lot you can do. They even have the panorama thing, just making sure to adjust your color balance. Sometimes don't use your flash on your phone. It's not good. You know what they have?
So,
I actually bought on TikTok when I first started doing, the little LED lights. They have the little clips. You can adjust your temperature. Daylight is like 5,500. If you want it more warm, you do it warm. But using something like that's way better than just this flash because it just sort of makes people like
right, right. And
horrible.
I think, look, it's not like it's film and it's not like it's costing you anything.
Yeah,
So take a couple of shots, adjust the f-stop or adjust, whether it's portrait or this, that, or the other.
right, right, right. I
And
think
then
it's a learning
also
experiment.
I can clean up pictures. I use Snapseed,
Okay,
which is a great program for me to play around with and get artistic with.
absolutely.
Uh, okay. The Artful Gourmet, just to tell people, it'll eventually come up here on the comment section. The Artful, so anything that you're doing, to go to theartfulgourmet.com. Links to everything we're talking about, her YouTube channel, the photography, the um, being a host, media, anything. By the way, you say content creator. That's very broad stroke. Can you give people an idea what you do with that?
Yes. So, back in the day, we were talking about like when I first started my blog, we were food bloggers, right? I don't think anybody calls themselves that anymore. And I think when they say content creator, it's adding the video element. So a lot of brands want short form videos, right? Like going to the restaurant or, showing a product, whatever. I think it's incorporating that video now as well as photo, but it's telling a story. I mean, I like to think of myself as a storyteller. Like, I didn't really study too much writing. I did take a professional food writing course in New York at Parsons with Andy Smith, who's amazing. And he taught us how to write a recipe correctly, how to write for a magazine versus how to write a head note for a cookbook or,
Right.
things like that, which is cool. But, I always was good at English, but again, I was an art major. But getting back to what I was saying, I think content creator, yes, it's broad. Um, but I think it just depends on what you like. And honestly, I didn't start my podcast or my YouTube channel. And really, I had a YouTube channel 10 years ago, but I never did anything with it. I think being away for 4 years and coming back, I was like, you know what? I am behind the camera most of the time or behind the scenes, right?
Right.
And when like I went around town, New York City with Tom Colicchio, and we were doing a promo for Arnold Bread, and he owns the sandwich shop that's right there in Bryant Park, right? So they wanted him
Right.
sandwich guy. So we went running around town, probably like 6 or 8 different food magazines. They were shooting videos and all this stuff. But I was never on camera. I was making all the food and he was talking, and I'm like, I always like kind of enjoyed talking to people and being in front of the camera because of my theater and singing background that I did in high school. Sorry about my cats. They're crazy. So I felt like this time around, I really just wanted to experiment with a podcast and do my YouTube. So I've started doing a lot of shorts, which are the little 2, 3 minute clips. I do that a lot because they're easy. You don't even have to be on camera for that, but you could be.
Right.
And then the long form videos, I mean, those take a long time. The last Groovy Eats episode that I did, I mean, the entire program that I did by myself took about 3 weeks because it took me about a week of just research, like the Eagles, where did they come from? What was their, all this stuff. I even watched a documentary. I read a book about them. So I really know what I'm talking about because I want to get the history right. But then even just shooting the YouTube by myself here, I'm doing all my own lighting and I have 2 cameras. I'm doing the dishes, I'm buying the food, I'm styling the food, I'm talking, I'm writing the script. It takes a while. Anyone that does YouTube, that. So those are harder to do unless that's all you're doing. I'm just trying to do maybe 1, maybe 2 a month of those because it's a lot. And then in terms of the other content, I think, writing on my blog, writing on Substack, which I just started a couple months ago and went on an awesome food writer retreat with a bunch of women there that are food stylists and photographers and writers. And I like Substack because you can monetize it through
Right.
subscriptions. Like with your blog, I never made money on my blog. I mean, I have gourmet ads on mine, which, you can start making a little bit of money, but unless you're getting millions of hits a day, you're not going to make $1 million off of ads.
And there's so much content out there, and
Yeah.
attention span is this big.
Yeah.
So, the Substack is that has replaced the blog.
Yes.
I was going to talk to you about it. It was a food writers retreat.
Yeah.
And it was the Substack people. And I think you did a blog. You did not a blog. You did a video or audio for a podcast calling
Yeah.
it that you found your tribe.
Yes.
And how wonderful.
Yeah.
For many years, I was involved with women chefs and restaurateurs, and I loved conference and made friends and
Yes.
could share so much. I
Yes.
think you were part of IACP for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I really just joined again in January, but because again, I was working for HEB, I was like out of touch with the entire world and New York and all those things because I wasn't trying to freelance and network. I was like, okay, I've got a job, here I am. I missed that. And I think that was my whole point. If people do want to listen to the podcast, I really not only found my tribe again, I found myself again. And I'm like, I need to get back to New York. My lease is ending in May anyway. So I've been like dying to get back. But I feel like, you know what? We had never met in person. We were just following each other. You know how people follow each other and you know who they are. But this one woman, Jen Sharp, is amazing. And she put it all together. We're going to start doing it every year, maybe in Europe next year if I can afford to go. But, it's going to be really cool. And they had Diane Jacob, which I'm sure you know her. She's amazing. She did 2 sessions by Zoom. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to come, but she was talking about how to break into cookbook publishing and how to also get freelance writing, like tips and tricks to get in with magazines. Because if you're going to write a cookbook, they want to know that you're published. And it's hard to get in sometimes when you're a new writer. I mean, I'm not a new writer. I've been published, but you got to put yourself out there. But, she teaches you how to write a query letter and how to focus on a topic and not just try to write about everything. If you're crazy about tomatoes, start writing articles about tomatoes and then do your tomato cookbook. I think it's important to kind of specialize and have your niche that makes you stand out from all the other writers there.
Well, you're very passionate about a lot of different things. So I think whatever you're passionate about, that's the path you have to take because you're going to want to do it. You're going to be driven by it.
Yes.
What was I going to say? There was so much here.
Can I add a note to what you just said?
Sure.
Or in the beginning, you're like, well, how do you have so much time? Honestly, I don't have a lot of time, but do you know how many times I've stayed up till 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. working on my podcast? Or, when I first started my podcast, I woke up at 5 a.m. and I'm like, I'm going to start my podcast. And I started getting these ideas and I would just keep going and going and going. And it's the passion that just keeps me going because I love talking about food and writing about food and shooting food so much that there's nothing else I'd ever want to do, And it's funny because my mom's like, what is this podcast thing? She's in the 80s. She's like, is anyone even listening? I'm like, Mom. I'm like, yes. I'm not, I don't have 1 million views yet. I just started in July, but I'm not doing it just because I want to make money. I'm doing it because I love talking to people about not just food even. I don't know if you saw my Into Focus is kind of more of a mindset and motivational series. And I started that because so many people, and I'm sure you've had this too, because you're a food stylist, people are like, what's a food stylist? How did you get into that? Tell me more. So I kind of wanted to just introduce to the world, what it is and how I got into the business. And from there, I just started, thinking about how can I help my listeners somehow, and different audiences, right? It could be a mom who wants to write a book or someone who's had a full-time job for 50 years. And they're like, you know what, this is really boring. And I really want to start my business. So if I could help one person or motivate them, because you know what, success is not easy. Believe me, it is a lot of late nights. And sometimes you have slow months, right? Like you'll work a bunch of jobs and then a whole month goes by and you're like, where is my next client coming from? And then boom, you'll get it. But not everybody can do that. Like you have to really want to be an entrepreneur or a solopreneur to do freelance work like that. So anyway.
Well, luckily, I'm in my senior years.
Nice, nice.
So I do the show. I was just telling Griffin, who you met quickly, who's doing the technical side of this with Zoom, um, that lost the thought. What's new at this age? Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. So this is the 280th show that I've done.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. When did you start your show?
Well, I kicked in with Jay Moore back in 2019, and we were in studio. And then I could only interview people in Baltimore or people who were willing to come into the studio.
Okay.
COVID.
Yeah.
Things change. There are episodes of me filming me in the kitchen, holding the phone, doing something live.
Yeah.
Was it this company, THB Bagels? You could go pick up a bagel kit and you had the raw dough and you would make bagels. So I'm making bagels.
Yeah. Which I think everybody was doing during COVID. It was like it was totally normal to have people.
Yeah. So it's been fun. But luckily, the benefit of this is Zoom and being able to interview people that I admire or people that I've known through my years between WCR and IACP and everything else that I've done, to have them on the show and have a nice chat. Yeah, it's great. I've had some absolutely amazing people like you, people who are underachievers, I call them jokingly. So they have so many degrees, or they start out in wanting to be, let's say, an engineer, and while they're going to college, they start working in a restaurant, they get the bug, and that's where they're going to be.
Yeah.
So we're at the point in the show where I ask my final questions.
Okay.
If you go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say follow your gut, like follow your instincts, right? A lot of times, especially when you're 18, you're just graduating from college. And I kind of was always one of those people, like, I thought I knew what I wanted to do, right? Like go into advertising and move to New York and all these things. But then things changed, right? Or, I moved to Atlanta. I was married for 5 years, but in my gut, I was like, I don't know if this is right. And that ended up ending. And that was when I moved to Australia. But you have these inklings, and you have to really listen to them, because if something doesn't feel right in your life or in your relationship or a job or whatever it is, you need to listen to yourself and not be so swayed by other people when you're that young, especially like your parents and other people. You're trying to please everybody else. I think just listen to your gut and go with that. And yeah.
Yeah. All righty. So if you wake up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
Well, I used to, like I said, I used to sing back in high school, like jazz choir and show choir and all that stuff. So I'm sure there's talent still in there. I haven't done it in a while, but you know what? I would love to be like a professional jazz singer, like Nora Jones or Diana Krall. I love that kind of music, and that's the music I like to sing that works with my voice actually too. So, maybe someday when I'm not doing what I'm doing anymore, maybe I will go try and sing somewhere. But yeah, I love music, and that's part of the reason my Groovy Eats YouTube show, I want to do music and tying it with food and recipes and memories and all of that. Music has just always been big in my family, and I've always loved it and been good at it. So, yeah.
Okay, before I go to the next question, everybody, the artfulgourmet.com. I don't know why it hasn't popped up, but it will be up there in the comments sections. But you see Kristen Hess, The Artful Gourmet. You will find her. You will find the YouTube channel, and the link will eventually pop up. So, next question. What are two must in your refrigerator?
Hot sauce. And it could be any kind of hot sauce, actually. I've probably got 10 or 12 different kinds in there. Sriracha, the red hot, the Mexican hot sauce. Especially living here in San Antonio, I've really gotten into Tex-Mex hot food. Second is probably, it's probably a tie between half and half, because I love my coffee, or dill pickles. I love pickles. I love and banana peppers. So that maybe is a tie too. So I don't know what it is. I love that tangy pickle type stuff on sandwiches, on pizza, on everything. It's just good stuff.
Well, maybe the peppers, the pickled peppers on a pizza. I don't see pickles on
not pickles
on pizza.
Although I have had a cheeseburger pizza. It's a little weird, but yeah, no, what do you call it? The little sliced banana peppers. Those are my fave. But I do like pickles too.
Your ultimate culinary fail.
Okay. I was thinking about this earlier because I'm like, oh God, what am I going to say? Now, do you mean like cooking or photography or anything?
Whatever, if I sit there and say culinary fail, whatever comes to your mind, that is culinary and a fail.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. So remember when I was talking about my friend Michelle, who hired me to do her photography in the beginning with her wine and food? Well, she went to go work for somebody for a little while. I don't even know what they did, but they were having an event in Soho, and they were taking care of it was like a corporate event, and it was this really cool event space. And she's like, you know what? Would you want to do some appetizers, little small bites for this party, for my company party? They'll pay you, whatever. We're going to take care of the wine and beer and food. Don't worry about it. There's a kitchen in there, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, sure, and it's just me in a little 500 square foot apartment in New York. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Catering? I'm not into catering, but here's the deal. No, the food was fine, but first of all, my fridge was not big enough, and I had to kind of like pre-cook things. Like I was making mini quiches, these little like teriyaki beef roll-ups with, little scallion peppers in there. So I kind of had stuff like half cooked and on trays. Well, I lived in a walk-up on the 4th floor, and I didn't have anyone helping me. I was working on this all week, making. It started out, probably 30 or 40 people. It went up to like 85 people. So I had to double the food, and I didn't know how to get all this stuff down my stairs. So David Hillman, the guy I did the Cooking with Color show with, I'm like, would you want to help me? I'll pay you to help me get this stuff down the stairs and we had to rent a minivan. There was probably 20 boxes of Fresh Direct boxes of food. We get there and the kitchen was not really a kitchen. It was like a bar area with a microwave, a toaster oven, a fridge. And they did have a real oven, like stovetop, but the oven was broke. So all those things that I needed to reheat, we ended up trying to reheat in a
toaster
or in a pan on the stove. I mean, it was like, oh my God, like the quiches weren't warm enough. And it turned into kind of a nightmare on my end, because we were stressed. But at the end of the day, the food ended up being fine, but it was just like the whole process. I'm like, I don't want to do catering unless I'm in a big kitchen with 20 people helping me with a big commercial kitchen. You know what I mean? So I decided after that, I don't want to do catering. I'm a food stylist. Different. So
I can appreciate that. We can have a whole conversation on the side about that. But
absolutely.
I'm just checking the time here. What didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
Let's see. I don't know. What's my favorite food?
Or okay, what's your favorite food?
Pizza, number one. I'm definitely from New York, and I love buffalo wings when they're done properly. I do like healthy food too. I mean, I do love salad and all that, but yeah, I think those are two of my favorite things. And it was funny because being here in Texas for 4 years, there's no good pizza and wings. I mean, maybe a chain, but I'm like, that would be a really good market if somebody needed to move to, wanted to open a restaurant, open a Bill's bar in San Antonio because they have no good pizza or wings.
Yeah, get a New York slice.
Exactly. So I can't wait to move back to New York for that reason. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well, let's put it this way, folks. If we missed anything, theartfulgourmet.com.
Yes.
You
And
can
Instagram,
contact
it's at
Kristen.
Artful Gourmet.
Kristen there. You can link to her podcast. You can hire her for food photography. And if you're in New York, throw her a welcome home party.
I can't wait.
Right?
Yes. Can't wait.
Yeah, Kristen, I want to thank you so much. I'm sure our paths will cross now that you're in New York. Maybe I'll see you at the Fancy Food Show.
Yes. It's coming up this summer, right?
Right. You'll be up there. Thank you so much. Continued success. And I have a few announcements to make. Griffin will take you out. Feel free to, once you're out, to click off or wait until I do my announcements, either or.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's really lovely talking with you. And yeah, I'll definitely reach out when I'm back in New York. I can't wait.
All right, great.
All right.
Okay, everyone. Next week's guest will be Alicia Kennedy, a writer from New York, based in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Her weekly newsletter on food culture, politics, and media from the desk of Alicia Kennedy has been mentioned by the New York Times Style Magazine, San Francisco Chronicle, New York Magazine, W, Food 52, Couverture, and Vogue Australia. Her writings have appeared in Eater, British Vogue, The Guardian, Harper's Bazaar. Kennedy has appeared on Good Morning America, the BBC World Service, and more radio shows and podcasts to talk about issues of food, media, culture, and meat consumption. Okay. Her new book release will be April 14th. It is called On Eating, the Making and Unmaking of My Appetites. If you need to reach me on Instagram, I'm at Dara Cooks. And on Facebook, you can find the Food Enthusiast. Feel free to go back into our show archives on jmoreliving.com. At the website, you'll see the menu. It says food. You'll see the Food Enthusiast. All 280 shows will be there for you to enjoy and share with friends and family. And don't miss the link there to sign up for the free bi-monthly food newsletter that comes out. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. May your plates always remain full.